Getting there. All right, we are live on YouTube.
Okay.
And we are live on Zoom.
Welcome everybody who is joining us today. We'll begin soon at 12:30. In the meantime, please introduce yourselves in the chat and make sure to send it to all panelists and attendees. Welcome everybody. As you are joining us today, please make sure to introduce yourselves in the chat and send it to all panelists and attendees. We will start promptly at 12:30. Welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is our K-12 Online Teaching Academy, and I'm Stephanie Eichley Chang coming to you here from the College of Education at San Jose State. And Brian Chung Dooley and I will be co-hosts on your call today. I'm very excited. We have Martin Cisneros joining us today, and he's Director of Technology Services from a local Berryessa Union School District here, local to San Jose. So we're super excited to have him. But before I hand it over, I'd like to go over a few announcements. Recording of this event, like all of our others, will be available afterwards at our registration website where you signed up, and Brian will be sending that out to you. Captions are available in the recording, and he will drop that link right there in the chat if you need that. A reminder that video and audio are automatically turned off today. We are a large group, so please use the chat to communicate with one another and with us, and use the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring that along the way. Also afterwards, if you haven't done this yet, go ahead and join our Facebook group or our LinkedIn group if you would like to network with the community afterwards and kind of discuss what's going on for all of us. So without a further ado, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Martin. Martin, welcome.
Oh, it does help if I turn on the microphone. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all doing well and can't wait to get you up and running. Like Stephanie said, my name is Martin Cisneros. I am, my current day job is I am the Director of Technology here at the Berryessa Union School District. I'm a modern learning advisor. So quickly, just a quick run. Started off in kindergarten, did not teach first and second. Oh, here's the best thing I can do. I've taught every grade level except first and second, 7th, and 10th and 11th. I taught everything else, including adults, 4 county offices, 4 universities, and this is what I'm doing now because I love what I do. So today's session, I'm gonna go ahead and quickly share my screen here so we can make sure that we're looking at everyone. And let me do this and bring it down. Oh, bring it back over here. There we go. All right. So today's session is called Creating with Chrome. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing that now. Oh, I am sharing it now. Make sure that everything's good to go. All right. All right, folks, let me move this over here and let's begin. So the reason I chose this topic of creating with Chrome is because I started looking at what we've been going through with distance learning for the past, few months, right? And for a lot of us, when someone asks you who's not an educator and they ask you, how is that distance learning going for you? This is the type of face that we do. At the same time, when you're looking at your teachers around you, they're telling you, hey, Martin, there is a lot of different changes going around. It's changing the way teachers view our profession. So I said, okay, how about your parents? How are they handling stuff? And of course, our parents are trying to make the best of it as well. So they're just a little, still baffled because of all the different tools that we are sending them in order to educate their children. And for a lot of you who were brand new to this, you knew you had the 333 recommendation of free edtech tools from the beginning. But the reality is our students slowly from February up until June slowly started to go away. And my question is, what happened if you had all this stuff, right? So I like to tell people it's all about engagement.
Good evening. I'm your guest lecturer, Dr. Sheldon Cooper. I was expecting applause, but I suppose stunned silence is equally appropriate. I agreed to speak to you this evening because I was told that you're the best and the brightest of this university's doctoral candidates. Of course, that's like saying you're the most important electron in a hydrogen atom. Because you see, there's only one electron in a hydrogen atom. Best and brightest, my sweet patootie. All right, let's begin. Show of hands. Who here is familiar with the concept of topological insulators? Don't kid yourselves.
All right. So the big question was why, and of course we saw it was engagement. But the other thing that I did want to speak to you about, the other reason why I want to create with Chrome is because most of our schools now have Chromebooks, or they're using whatever it is they're using Chrome as a web browser. And the research shows that more people are doing more consuming than creating, right? And that doesn't do well for anyone, right? So the need is to start thinking about the different steps of learning and start thinking about what are all the different things that we need to do in order to get our kids to the top 3 levels of critical thinking, right? Whether it's analyzing, evaluating, or creating. And that's what I want to focus on today. I want to focus on this component right here, on the creating, on the possibilities, right? Especially with storytelling. What is your story of learning? What is your story of teaching? And what is your story of creating new modern knowledge? So with that, we're going to be looking at digital design strategies that really enhances the equity of all student voices. And the reason why I'm saying that as well, the wonderful people that you're looking at, those are my personal kids as well, right? So I have, and I have one missing, but I've had the gamut. I have one who's just graduated from San Jose State, whoop, whoop, this year, all the way down to my little guy who's about to start 3rd grade, right? And everyone in between. So I keep on thinking about Charlie Munger's quote, right? Those who keep on learning keep rising in life. And that is no different during the time that we're going through now. So when I think about that, I think about, well, what's the best thing we can do for our students? And the best thing I believe is to build agency with all of our students. So what does that mean? Okay, so agency is the ability of a student to display growth, mindset, grit, and ownership over their learning, right? So they have an idea of not only their aptitudes and their interests, but taking the reins and making sure that they know how to solve real world problems. Because here's the thing right now, right? Right now we're in the moment in history that we're trying to create change agents, right? We're in that wonderful intersection of critical thinking and student agency. And agency is not something that you buy. It's not a curriculum. It's not a tool that you use. Basically what it is, it's a process, right? And there's 2 types of process. Those, you have, the kids who already know themselves. They know what type of learners they are. So they know how to navigate, this wonderful complex system of different media in order to enhance their skill sets for what they want to learn. And then number 2, we have the other kids who still need to learn about how do they explain about their learning, how do they explain about the process that they're going through or creating, or asking how to meet their learning needs as they continue to grow. So how do we do it? For me, the ultimate vision is we build these what I call strategy scaffolds for students. So in other words, I help develop teacher, students, and parent toolboxes. So I'm going to give you an example, right? If you haven't read Dave Burgess's, Teach Like a Pirate, I took that information about, well, how do we hook students? And my biggest thing is like, well, teach them how to learn with today's tools. So I'm going to give you a quick example, right? So let's just talk about YouTube, because video is very, very important in not only our lives, but in our students' lives. But how do you teach students how to learn even more with YouTube? So I'm going to give you an example about video, right?
Lung trouble can come from the air you breathe at work, but thanks to the American Lung Association, you can breathe a little easier. They're working to fight all this lung disease. Your lungs are a miracle. Take care of your lungs. They're only...
Okay, so I don't know about you, but the guy's speaking pretty quick, right? And for a lot of us, and including myself, I grew up here in California as an English language learner, and sometimes I felt as if my teachers were speaking to me at this particular speed. And not only was I trying to understand the content, but I was also trying to understand the language, right? And that could be even for your monolingual kids. But look at this. If I go back here, I'm going to rewind back. If you click on settings and go to playback speed and then bring it back just to 0.75 and look at the following.
But thanks to the American Lung Association, you can breathe a little easier. They're working to fight all this lung disease. Your lungs are a miracle. Take care of your lungs. They're only human. And if my lungs weren't in great shape, I couldn't have said all this.
So just that by itself, right? That by itself, you allow your students to to really take charge of how they're going to learn this information. So the one thing about creating video, with video, did I stop sharing? Yes, I did. With video, you have the ability to to give the students the power to either speed up, stop, rewind, or slow down, right? And I want you to think about students that you have had and teachers you have had in the past where you wish, oh, I was trying to write this down. I just wish I could have paused them and rewind them back. Well, guess what? Now you can, right? And we're going to talk about tools, that you can use with video in a variety of ways. But I want to make sure that you understand that these are just like different scaffolds. So in my class, I try to make sure that, with my teachers, that they at least share one, I call these learning hacks in a way. So I try to teach them at least one. So let me share with you a few others. All right, let me move this guy to the side. All right, so the other one is using closed captions, right? And like I said before, if you look at the research, closed captioning helps people understand or remember the content between 20 to 40% more. So here's a great little hack. I'm currently using Google Slides in order to present my information to you. But did you know, well, let me go back. Did you know that if you go back here and you go down to the bottom, you have all these wonderful tools? My eyes goes to the captions component down here. I go down and I click on extra large for the size of the text that I want. Up at the top, I put my text position at the top. So that way you're going to see it on top of your screen. But this is what I mean. I'm going to click on closed captions. And now you'll be able to read everything that I'm saying live right at the top, right? So for me, I do this even in my own home where I have most of my monitors, TVs, whatever it is that we're running at home, where we have closed captioning, because number one, it could be, noise. Number two, for us, it allows us to, to get the information in multiple ways. Not only am I viewing it, I'm also listening to it, and I can read it at the same time. So whatever type of learner that your students prefer, or learning that your students prefer, you're now giving them that option at the same time. So that is a great way of doing it. And I tell this to people as well. You don't need to have a full slide deck like what I have up and running. What you can do is just make sure that you put up a title of whatever it is that you're speaking about, and then hit play, and then go down here at the bottom and click on closed captions, right? So now, like I said, this is a lot of the tools that you're going to see here are free. So you're going to hear me say the words either free 99 or freemium. So free 99 means that the tools are absolutely free, but they might have, after a certain point, you might need to pay for extra features or so forth. And so freemium is another word that I use as well, meaning that they're free to a certain point, then you have to pay. The other thing that I do want to tell you is that all my on my slide deck, these are all I create like an ebook in a way. So a lot of the images that you see here, you click on it and it'll automatically take you to a spot, so you can either grab the tool or learn more. So I won't have the opportunity to go through every single slide on my slide deck today, but I do this on purpose. So that way I go with the flow of my audience. So save it and you can go back and explore it later on. So once again, so we're talking about Dave Burgess and teach like a pirate, and pirate stands for an acronym. So he talks about the passion. How do you include your passion in your lessons? How do you immerse kids to be present, to be involved? And in my head, I always try to make sure that I have my students help me build the curriculum as we move forward. How do you build that rapport with your students, right? How do you get your students to create a vision that you want? How do you have them achieve the goals, their learning goals that they set for themselves at the very beginning? If you're not asking your students what learning goal that they want to use during the time they're in your classroom, maybe that's just a starting point for you, right? And then asking yourself, how are you going to transform your lessons going from face to face over to digital, especially distance learning? A lot of you might have that blended learning time, so it all depends whether you're going to be teaching middle school or high school or elementary. In our neck of the woods, what we're looking at other districts is most districts are going to be doing the blended component, maybe 2 days out of the week where they're going to be coming to school, and then the rest of the time they're going to be distance learning. Whereas middle school and high school, most likely is going to start off with distance learning. So I want you to think about, as you listen to today, how do you bring that enthusiasm that you have in the classroom up to distance learning, right? And then hopefully you'll come away with different tools and strategies to create and craft engaging lessons. But at the end, for me, I call these hooks, right? These are all learning hooks. And the first thing that I want to show you is when you think about hooks, there's different types of hooks. There's the kinesthetic hook, there's the artistic hook, right? So I'm going to give you a quick example. So I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to bring this back over here. Let me exit this. And let's see. Can I see everyone? Well, I can see a few of you. All right. Let's see. Both. Okay, I won't be able to see. Okay, let's do the following. Okay, I just want you to play along. So what I want you to do right now is, if you have a cell phone, right, go ahead and grab it. And what I want you to do is I want you to click on the camera and turn the camera as if you're going to take a selfie, right? So here's a tip that I learned from a friend of mine who teaches at Berkeley, and he's an iPhoneographer. So he's a professional photographer who takes, who creates video and pictures through an iPhone. But you can do this with anything. And I always tell people, it's like every time I meet a new friend online, when I first meet them in real life, I normally ask before we meet, is that a current picture of you? Do you look like that, or is it something different? And I tell that to people because, of course, there's a variety of how people present themselves. So I give this hack, and I'm giving this hack for those of us who, after a certain age, gravity takes its toll on your body. So here's the hack, right? The first thing you want to do if you have your cell phone, once again, turn on the camera, make sure it's facing yourself, and I want you to extend it. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'm extending it like this, and point it towards you, and have your finger on top of the shutter that you're about to take your picture. But here's what I want you to do. What I want you to do is we're going to do an exercise for about 30 seconds. I want you to take your chin and I want you to push it up as far as possible. as if you're trying to touch the roof with your chin. When you do so, you're going to feel the bottom muscle stretching out. So you're going to leave it up there, right? Keep on there. And of course, it works a lot better if you're not like me trying to speak at the same time. All right. So now I'm going to count from 15 to 1. And I want you to hold it and don't do anything until I tell you the next instructions. Okay. So here we go. 15, 14, 13, 12, 10. Oh, I forgot 11. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Don't put your head down because here's what you're about to do. By the time I count to 1, you are going to put your head down and you're going to turn to the camera and then you're going to take a picture. Ready? 3, 2, and go. Now, you might need a little practice, but the reality is you need about 45 seconds to a minute for that to really work. What you're doing is when you're stretching this out and you hold it up for 45 to a minute, the longer the better. And when you go down, this right here, ladies and gentlemen, it stays up for at least 2 seconds. No filters needed on that, right? So I just improved a way that you can tell that you can take a selfie, of course, to enhance your pictures, whether they're for presentations or anything else. But the reason what I was showing you that is the fact that what I just showed you was both a kinesthetic hook and an artistic hook, right? So this is what I'm talking about, folks, is how do you bring your students into what you're trying to do and make it fun? There's, of course, inspirational. There's classroom environment hooks, like how can you recreate your class? But since we're distance learning, think about how you can use this space. Storytelling, we're going to get into in a moment, and of course, entertainment and technology hooks. So the awkward question, we always get, of course, do you want to be great? Do you want to enhance your pedagogy? Do you want to enhance your skills? And the answer for everyone is usually yes, of course we do. So where do we begin? Of course, my thing is go online, build your professional learning family, make connections with people here today, right? For those of you who have been doing this for quite a bit, I always tell folks, you're seeing my tagline at the bottom. You can pretty much find me at any social media at the Tech Profile, and I'll be more than happy to extend this conversation with you after today's session. But find other people who are doing the same thing that you're doing, right? So, and the same thing about your area. So if you're teaching science, this is a way you can be a pirate. If you're teaching math, this is a way you can be a pirate. If you're teaching English language art, this is a way you can be a pirate. Social studies. Anyways, you get the idea. And yes, I'm going quick through all my slides because you can always go back and read them later. I'm going to start with, of course, engagement hooks, right? And we talked a little bit about these wonderful things. But one of the things that I always tell folks is make sure that you understand that there are tons of tools that can enhance what you're trying to do with your students. But I also want you to take a look at strategies, right? So if you are not familiar with Hyperdocs, Hyperdocs is a different way of creating a lesson and a unit that pretty much, flips the way we normally teach. And part of a Hyperdoc is something called a multimedia text set. A multimedia text set shifts the cycle of learning, which we go from explaining, the traditional of explain, assign, and assess to explore, explain, and apply. What are they used for in teaching? They're used to explore content, extend the learning, or review a concept. Personally, I always say, creating multimedia text sets is a great way to stop talking. As teachers, we love to talk, but sometimes our students is like, can't you just give us something that we can explore on our own? And then after explore, give us an opportunity to explain in different formats. And then, clicking on making sure that we know how to apply the information, because we're now living in a world where, this is now a must, right? So I'm going to stop sharing now because let's see, Stephanie, if you're there, can I get you
Yes.
to show your video really quick? You're going to be my partner in this.
Okay.
All right.
Hello.
All right, Steph. So do you remember that, when you were a kid and you asked, the teacher asked you, Steph, when you grow up, what do you want to be? What did you answer?
I used to say I wanted to be a flight attendant because I wanted to travel.
Yes, yes, yes. Brian, how about yourself, sir? What was your answer to that?
Said artist because I wanted to create.
Right. So here's the thing that I want to point out is, I said the same thing. I can't remember if I said firefighter or I wanted to be in SWAT because I would remember watching the, I wanted to be part of the tactical police force, at that point in time, or be part of the army, whatever. And if I remember correctly, each one of us had the opportunity to mention a job that already existed. In today's world, and both Brian and Steffi, you guys know this more than anyone else, a lot of our kids are coming into, especially in the university, and by the time they come out, things have shifted in less than 4 years. So, a good friend of mine, Mr. Jamie Castle from Google, one of his saying is, which I really enjoy, is instead of us as educators, keep continue to tell our students, Johnny or Jocelyn, when you grow, what do you want to be when you grow up? We should be asking, when you grow up, what wicked problem do you want to solve, right? Because that is now our, that is now our world. Is how do we teach kids how to solve real world wicked problems, and how do we give them the tools? Is how do we give them the opportunity? So with that, I am going to share with you. Go desktop 2, and this is how we do it, right? So I'm going to give you an example here. So for those of you who are following along, we are on slide 56. And what you see here is an example of a multimedia text set. So I'm going to click on it. And I'm going to highlight the URL for those of you who are not playing along on the... and I'm going to put it on our chat. So what I want you to do is I want you to take the next 2 minutes just to go ahead and explore this multimedia text set. Okay, so I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. I'm gonna play a little music in the background, and I will see you all back in about 2 minutes. Took the opportunity to click on the link that was shared in the chat, and that brought you to this text set. This is a great way to introduce the topic of what is a refugee, because if you're looking at this is called a game board, right? So basically what it is, it's just a normal Google Doc that we created a table inside of it. In the table, we gave it, a different headings. Listen, compare, define, explore, examine, analyze content, question, read, watch, infer, wonder, right? So all these different things are different ways of exploring information. Now, I don't know about you, but we live in a time where students love different modalities of learning, and that's what you're doing here. You're also differentiating for students who are have learning difficulties. You're also allowing students to use different parts of their reasoning to interact with different types of media, and then at the very end you have a place. Now, what I put down here is, a Padlet, but the reality, this is that this can be a link to your student information system, whether you're using Google Classroom, whether you're using Seesaw, whether you're using Canvas, Schoology, or whatever other learning management system you're using, right? And the wonderful thing about this is that, you as the instructor, you get to curate this information for your students. So, when I think about my experience, I know that there was a lot of teachers who would dump a lot of information on students, and I always say, to folks, especially with the internet, yeah, of course you can dump, but you don't want to dump, you want to curate. So, if you want to learn more about multimedia text sets, if you look at our slide 57, you can see the different, what's the difference between a multimedia text set and where it fits under a Hyperdoc, right? So for me, the first thing I think about is a way to replace my lecture, a way for a synchronous activity to be happening with my students, right? Here are some two other examples that I have for you. So here's, a table template. Over here, you have a game board template, which is what we went through. And understand that there are also, one of the reasons why you want to do this is because you want to give your students multiple opportunities for them to show you what they know, whether it's through an activity in Desmos or a graphic in Canva or a video in Adobe Spark or any of these other multiple ways of doing it. What I've done for you here also is I clicked on, or I provided, and I'm going to highlight, copy, and post this on the chat. Oh, I'm doing this just to all panelists. Hold on. There we go. All right. So on there, if you click on that link, that should, you know what? No, I did the wrong thing. Let me do it this way. Try that again. There we go. All right. So what you see in here is you now see different multimedia text sets for reading and writing and history and science and math, PE, art and music, world languages. Anyways, my thing with this is if you're brand new to this, do not reinvent the wheel. Go here, look at something that might connect with you and just do a remix of this, right? There is tons of information. Like I said before, my slide deck reads like an ebook. So when you have an opportunity later on, go back through it, click on some of these images so you can read more about it. All right. So multimedia texts are a huge part of a Hyperdoc. So what is a Hyperdoc? And a Hyperdoc is a way to build out a unit or a lesson in advance. The components of a good lesson design are automatically built in. So the components are: how do you engage students? How do you have them explore? How do you have them explain, apply, reflect, share, and extend? And I love the last three: the reflecting, the sharing, and extending of learning, because a lot of the time in a traditional classroom, we don't have the opportunity to do that, right? So if you're looking at this graphic, you're seeing that it's a different way of packaging the information. You're giving flexible design templates, and you're really allowing the student to, to work at their own pace with a variety of different digital media components, right? And there's a whole lot more built in. But if you've never seen a Hyperdoc before, here is an example of one. Copy. And posting that on the chat as well. And what you're going to see here is you're going to see the, at least the four, basic elements: the engaging, the exploring, the explaining, and the applying. And it's also a table. So on the left-hand side is what you want your students to engage with. And it's usually some type of video or some type of interactivity component. On the right-hand side is what you want your students to do, right? So you're always leading with tasks that you want your students to do. And once again, this in itself allows for students to explore or get excited about the content. And it leads them through a whole, different series. And what's nice about this is, once again, what your students are experiencing at home, as much as we would like it to, they cannot do the exact same thing as they were doing when they were in your classroom. By creating multimedia text, by creating Hyperdocs, you now allow your students to work at their own place, at their own path, at their own pace, and also have them use a variety of different tools that they can enhance their learning, which is what we're about to get into. So the purpose, once again, of a Hyperdoc is to create good thinkers, to give them or give them different ways for them to understand the content by building comprehension prior for them doing an activity, and also to offer them a voice and choice on how they can present the information to you. All right. So one of the things that is used quite often with both multimedia text and with Hyperdocs is the use of videos, right? And I always tell folks there are tons of resources out there, but I'm going to show you one that I think is pretty slick. And this one's called ClassHook. I'm going to tell you why I love ClassHook. So ClassHook is one of those freemium tools that you can do for free, but at the same time, if you really like it, you can of course pay for the full service. But let's say, for example, if I was to be doing this in the classroom, my age might show with a lot of my pop culture references. And sometimes, you know, when I play videos, or when I used to play videos, kids would stare at me like, "What? We don't understand." So when I'm looking for videos, instead of going directly to YouTube, I come to ClassHook first. So let's say, for example, I want to teach my students about Newton laws, right? If I click on search, over here it'll tell me, Martin, do you want to search by grade level, by clip length? And I'm going to stop right here because I always tell people, if you're going to do any video in the classroom, try to make sure that it is under 5 minutes, right? And the reason why I tell people this is, like, for a lot of our students, they're growing up in the TikTok era, and if if your video goes beyond 4 to 5 minutes, for them it feels like a documentary. So try not to give out documentaries, right? And what you see here, if I say, I just want a short 1 to 2 minute video, and I'm gonna hit on apply. So it goes from 24 searches to 9 searches, right? And these are all about what? About Newton's laws. And when you look down here, it tells you the type of topics it goes through, but it also tells you whether it's meant for middle school or high school. If you look down here on Rocket Power, the E stands for elementary and middle school, right? So I love this. I love the fact that I no longer have to spend hours and hours trying to find the right video, because now I can use ClassHook for either integrating in my multimedia text sets or in my Hyperdocs. With that being said, what I've done for you as well is I've also created some links. So if you want to learn more about, what are other tools, Martin, that my students can use. So once again, I went back on, and this is on slide 65. If you click on show what you know text sets, it's going to take you to a 1 tab. And on the 1 tab, you're going to see a variety of text sets that I have curated. And these text sets, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have your Google account. And once you have your Google account, you can go up to File and make a copy, and then you can remix this however you like, right? So here's tools to connect. Here are show me what you know bingo, right? Here is show me what you know for screencasting. So there's a variety of screencasting tools. So all of these, these are all tools that I use with all my students. And we're going to talk a little bit about, well, what, how do you, like Martin, like these are great, but how do you know which tool to use? So I'm going to show you how I fish, right? So how do you know which tool to use at the right time? So the first thing is, I always tell people, go to edtechteacher.org. That is edtechteacher.org. Or if you're in my slide presentation, this is slide number 68. So in EdTech Teacher, here's what I do. I go straight to the top where it says what we recommend. Down here at the bottom left, I go to App and Tech Tool Guide, and this is what I do next, right? The first thing I think about is, what is the learning activity I want my students to do? So I go down, and of course you can choose by device or grade level, but I'm gonna just tell you the way I design professional or learning experience for my students. I go down here to where it says learning objective. I then go and look at all the different objectives. In other words, what tasks do you want your students to do, right? And there's a plethora of stuff that you can do over here. So I'm going to just say I want my students to collaborate, right? After I say that, the first thing I think about is, what device do most of my students have? So since we're talking about creating with Chrome, I'm going to click on Chrome, but you can also choose Android, laptop, or iPad. And of course, you can choose the grade level. But what I really want you to see is down here, you have 25 entries. In other words, there are like 25 different tools that you can use if you want your students to collaborate. How I use this is, I look at this and I'm saying, oh, okay. Let's say, for example, that I had chosen laptop and iPad as well, right? Because the other thing I think about is, well, maybe a lot of our students aren't using a Chromebook, but they're using something at home. They either have a laptop or an iPad, or like I said, or Android. But here's what I do. I go down here and I start looking at the tools. Oh, so there's Evernote. Oh, there's Google Drive. Oh, there's Google Keep. Oh, there's iCloud. Oh, there's Jamboard, right? So I'm gonna stop there. So I'm gonna say, okay, here's Jamboard. You can use it on a laptop, iPad, Chromebook. Here are all the different grade levels, but this is where my eye really goes, right here. I love that word. It's like a Sunday morning. It's easy, right? Easy like a Sunday morning. So yeah, Jamboard is going to be one. So here's what I do next, ladies and gentlemen. What I do next is I try to build schema with my students, right? And what I mean by that, I mean the following. So in class, I go through this and I choose about four different tools. By the way, EdTech Teacher has been around for, I think, close to a decade now, and they vet all these different tools with different teachers and educators who use technology. So it's one of, like I said, it's one of my first go-to. So I trust them, in other words. And then what I do is I break up my class and I say, okay, class, this group, I want you guys, here's your task. And oh, by the way, you guys are going to use Google Keep in order to do your task. Next team, you guys are going to be using Jamboard. Next team, you guys are going to be using, OneDrive or Padlet or whatever, the four tools that I use. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because who doesn't know all these tools? I don't. But here's the reason why I do it. The reason why I do it is because who has more time than you do to learn about tools? That's right. Students do, right? So what I do is once they're ready to present, and I make sure their presentation is nothing longer than a minute or two. But what I always tell them is like, okay, before you even present, what you need to do is you need to give me a 1 to 2 minute presentation or video preferred, about how do you use the tool that was given to you as a group. Because here's what ends up happening, right? They are the ones that figure the tool out. They learn how to use it and they learn how to apply it. Great. Then what do? They teach it not only to me, but to the rest of the class. And what do I do on that wonderful day? I get my handy dandy notebook out, grab my pen, and then of course you put your teacher face on, right? Because they don't know that you don't know how to use that tool. So you're sitting in the back of the classroom or on this side of the screen and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you can do that. Oh, that is so awesome. But you're not allowing your students to know that you don't know what's going on. And the way I build schema is after that is done, I post their video on whatever learning management system, whether it's once again Schoology, whether it's a Canvas, or whether it's, Google Classroom, Seesaw, whatever it is that you're using. And then for the next week or the next, and these are small projects. They're not very large projects because, it's all about building schema. The more reps, the better they're going to be with it. And then I change it. So then, team one will not use Evernote. They're going to use Padlet. And, like I said, I choose at least 4 different tools and I keep on rotating them. And they say the same thing to those particular groups. Oh, group one already presented this piece of information. You're also going to present on that same tool, but you need to present on something that's different. And after 4 weeks or 4 times of doing this, what ends up happening is you give the ability for students to learn how to use a tool, and then you can also give them the opportunity to learn from their peers, right? Which is the whole reason what we want to do, because we're trying to build agency once again with our students. We want to make sure that they have enough repetition and learning how to use these tools. So that is my go-to when it comes to building schema. And once again, I use EdTech Teacher, but if you look on slide 69, here are other 3 companies that I use in order to fish for tools. All right. The last component of the 3 different strategies, we heard about multimedia tech sets. We heard about Hyperdocs. So Edu protocols, I heard that you're also were exposed if you have been coming to these. If not, it's, their tagline is teach better and work less and do not be frustrated with the technology that your students have. But basically, Edu protocols are frames. They're teaching frames. learning frames that can be used daily, weekly, and pretty much all year. Students can work on multiple standards and make logical connections, right? And most of edu protocols can be done in less than a period, so they don't take a long time to do. They definitely enhance student engagement and can easily be adapted to any grade level. All right. So with that being said, I try to give a little bit of research, and what we look at, this is all the different opportunities and different stuff that we try to do with reading, math, and science scores. And if you look from 1970 to 2010, and the reality is that this has continued even up until 220. We haven't done very much, but then we started looking at schools and seeing where a lot of the teachers went from, within a few months, right? We're looking at English language arts, and by them just using edu protocols, look at how much they went up, right? And this is for math. Now I understand, like you're like, wait a minute, Martin. 15% is not very good. Well, it was very good from where they started, which was at 3.3, and this was a beginning teacher within a few months. So my thought is, yes, there are a lot of edu protocols. You're going to get samples to a lot of the templates. One of the ones that I love is called the Fast and Curious, right? The Fast and Curious is a way to immediately give the students information that they need to learn. Instead of your students memorizing vocabulary or recalling, questions, stuff that we take a long time, can now be done in a quicker way. So I'm going to give you a great example, right? One of them is to use a tool like quizzes. So this is an assessment tool, and I don't want to join the game. Let me go back. Let me log in. And let's see, we don't have the full amount of time to play an actual game, but I'll lower down the volume a little bit. But what I want to show you, between screens. I'm just looking at the time, but I'm going to fast forward a little bit more. What quizzes allows my students to do is to take a quick quiz on certain information. I was going to do the whole logo one. But what happens afterwards is the student, I get the fast feedback, because we only do this for like a minute or two. This is before even doing any type of teaching. I just give them, we're doing Fast and Curious on the name of the topic, and then I set them free. I create the quiz, and by the way, there's already literally thousands of quizzes on quizzes, which all I do is copy and then present it to my students. And what I love about it is the fact that after they finish, and I give them like 3 to 5 minutes, and I'm saying on here that there was a demo on Fast and Curious yesterday's webinar, so yay. But they take a quiz, and at the end of the quiz, you as the instructor get all the information that you need. It tells you, which problem they had. You see which concepts they didn't understand. And then what you do afterwards, you spend about 5 to 10 minutes to go over the questions with your students, and then you play the same game again, because guess what happens to your average score? It normally ranges from 30 to 40%, and then after that you'll see a 45%. And this is Monday, right? Guess what happens on Tuesday or the next day you're with them? The same thing. And what you end up seeing is you end up seeing this trajectory that your students are now understanding the concepts in a short amount of time. They internalize two different things. They internalize that, oh, this is not a gotcha, right? Mr. C. Sniddles is not using assessment as a gotcha. What he's doing is he's allowing us to, to understand try to understand the concept. And then afterwards, if we don't understand, he does a mini lesson. And then after that, we try it again. So what you end up seeing in this process is that by Thursday, most of your students have 90% or even more. And then after 2 or 3 weeks of doing this, they understand the process of Fast and Curious, and what you end up getting back is time for that Thursday, and Friday. So that means that most of your students by Wednesday understand most of those concepts. And that's the beauty about the Fast and Curious, right? Um, the other, another edu protocol that I really enjoy is called Sketch and Tell. And especially because of using sketch notes as notes. Because if any of you were like me when I was a kid, right? By the time you were in third grade, your teacher was like, quit scribbling, quit drawing, take real notes is what my teachers used to tell me, from third grade on up. And honestly, I love sketchnoting because as a kid, that's how I remembered stuff by drawing stuff and that made meaning for myself of the content and the language that I was trying to learn. Long story short, of course, we now have research saying that, of course, if kids, sketch note, they retain more of the information. So down here, there is a template for Sketch and Tell, and you have all the templates, of course, for edu protocols in the slide deck. But basically, what it is whether they're reading something, whether they're viewing information, whether they're going to be listening to you speaking as your lecture. What you want them to do is they sketch here on the left hand side, and then of course they take notes on the right hand side. So when I tell people this, it's like, Martin, this is great. The only thing that I don't like about this is that you're using Google Slides, and it's very hard to sketch on Google Slides. So that's when I say, well, there are some pretty nifty tools that you can use for sketchnoting and taking notes and telling stories. And one of my favorite ones is something called AWE-app. And AWE-app stands for Another Web Whiteboard. And I'm going to give you an example. Stephanie and Brian, you still with me?
Still here.
All right. So you guys are going to be my guinea pigs again. So here's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to draw a number here. And what I'm about to do is I am about to give you access to this whiteboard. I'm going to put it on on the chat. And what I want you to do is I want you to click on that link, which is going to take you to this board. And I want you to choose, number one, a different color, and two, give me a graphic representation of what you think that number means. So once again, you're just giving me a drawing, a graphic representation of what this number means. Put a little music for you guys. This is, and of course, as you guys all saw, I didn't tell neither of you how to use the tool. I just told you to do it, right? And of course, you guys both did a wonderful job. But the other thing I want to tell the rest of you folks is what I love about this is, number one, who's doing most of the modeling? Not me. You guys are, right? Number two, it's also engaging because now you have something to do instead of me hearing me speak all day. And what I love about AWE-app, you can, of course, log in or whatever, but you didn't see me log in. So you can use this without, especially for the littles, you don't need to sign up for it. All I did was I went to AWE-app, I created a new board, and then I went to the invite button and click copy link and send it off. So how would I modify this in the classroom? Number one, whether you're doing synchronous or asynchronous learning, this is now how you can model back and forth. Once again, this is called AWE-app. AWE stands for Another Web Whiteboard, and you can grab this at aweapp.com, or you can grab this by going to slide 80, right? All right. The other tool that I'm going to show you really quick is something called Autodraw, because I get this all the time. I always get students who say, oh, Mr. Cisneros, I can't draw. I can't do the sketchnoting thing. So here's the next one, right? This is called Autodraw. So Brian and Stephanie, you don't have to show your camera, but just unmute yourselves because I want you to play along. I just want you to shout out what it is you think I am drawing. You ready? Here we go.
Yep. Waves. Ocean.
Keep them coming. What do you think I'm drawing?
Well, it was waves. Fishing pole?
Whatever comes to your mind.
A face?
Hmm.
A dragon.
Crustless
Bam!
pizza.
Yeah. So so yes, I'm looking at it quickly. So this is, of course, in the chat room. I'm seeing, what am I using? I'm using a laptop, ladies and gentlemen. And basically what I love about this is Google and artificial intelligence. So what I'm doing is I click on Autodraw. So whatever I'm trying to draw, right? Whether, I'll do the same thing again. But if you notice, every time I draw something, there's some icons that pop up here in the top, and it says, what do you mean? So every time I'm drawing something, it's trying to figure out what I'm trying to draw, right? So I'm drawing the same sketch that I did before, but maybe this time it thinks I'm drawing some chonies, right? But I'm not. So the reality is, you can now use Autodraw to help you tell a story. But the reality, I tell folks that, for a lot of my students, I tell my students, if you can draw a circle, if you can draw a square, if you can draw a line, if you can draw a triangle, and if you can draw a dot, you can pretty much draw whatever it is that you need to do. But for those students who will still, tell you, no, I cannot draw, then of course you give them auto draw. So those are some great tools that I love to use with Sketch and Tell, and a lot of the stuff. Once again, if you want to learn more, go to eduprotocols.com. And if you can, get book 1 and 2. There's some really great stuff in there that will blow your mind. What I've done for you here on slide 82. If you guys are teaching English language arts, this is from my friend Kim Bogie, who developed this, but this is a great idea of how which edu protocols you should use for the different reading anchor standards, and the same thing goes for the mathematical practices. What would be some great edu protocols you can use for those particular ones? So once again, when you have time, go back. You're going to see a ton of really cool resources on here. I see that we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to leave you with my Modern Learner Toolkit. And this toolkit is basically how to teach students how to read the web. So I'm going to give you an example here, right? Here's what happens is now that you have the internet to pretty much pick up curriculum, here's what happens. You find a great article. The bad component is if you're trying to teach it like I am right now, you're probably focusing on everything except what the title is going to be. You're looking at the video here, you're looking at the advertisement here. So one of my first tools that I use is something called Mercury Reader. Once again, this is on slide 84. So if you click on Mercury Reader, it's going to take you to the spot where you can install a small little application, or for Chrome, this is called an extension that you can install that will allow you to do the following, right? So you're seeing all this madness. If I go up here to the top of my URL and I click on the Mercury tool, what you see it'll automatically eliminate all the different noise, including the videos. And it does a few other things, right? Number one, it changes the text size. So I always leave mine at large. You can choose the different typography, whether you like serif or sans serif. And just for a note, Mercury Reader uses a font. So if you do have the dyslexic readers, it will help them read this page, which is now the internet, a lot better. And then, of course, the reason why I always have everything in dark mode is because it helps me save the blue light coming from the eye. So here's a word to the wise. If you're spending more than 2 hours on any screen, make sure that you turn on dark mode. If you don't know how to turn on dark mode, connect with me later. I can show you how to do that on your machine. So that's Mercury Reader. So that's part number one of teaching kids how to read the internet. The second part is knowing what level of reading this is in. So let's say, for example, if I'm in middle school, right, and I have 7th or 8th graders, will my students be able to understand this? Well, first of all, you all know that you have different reading level groups. So what I do is I highlight that whole section, and I come up here to a tool called Crafty Level. And when I click onto Crafty Level, what it tells me the Flesh Kincaid reading level, that this is on a 10.7 Flesh Kincaid, meaning 10th grade, 7th month. So that means if I have middle school kids, I might have a few who might read at that level, but the reality is that most of my kids will not be able to use or read this information. But that's where these tools come in, right? My first tool is called TLDR. So what I do is I take this article, I come up here and I click on TLDR, and it's a tool that goes through the whole article and it chunks the information for me at 4 different levels. So this is for your struggling readers. This is for your not so struggling readers. These are for the kids who are almost there, and these are for your kids who get the whole 9, right? So of course you can copy this, put this into a Google Doc and share it that way. That was, of course, TLDR, but my favorite one out of this is something called Resumer, because check this out. It does the same thing, but it gives you a little bit more power. So I'm going to click on Resumer. And with Resumer, it does the same thing as TLDR. It will go out to the internet. It's now chunking the information, and it reduces the text to 44%. But look at this at the bottom. I can download this as a PDF, doc, copy it, or translate it if I need to. But I can also go to manual, and what manual does is it doesn't matter what type of reading levels I have in my classroom. I can now chunk this and differentiate this for any type of student that I have in my classroom, right? Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it gets even better, because here's my favorite one. It's called Analyze. If you click on Analyze, what it goes through your whole article and then highlights the most important sentences for that article. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a free 99 tool, right? And I am now looking at the time. Like I said, click and use. You're going to find a variety of different tools that are out there. All of these tools can give your students more voice and choice. Like I said, we don't have time to go for everything else, but you do have this. And like I said, click on, let me just go down to the bottom here. Click on the images you see on my presentation slide deck. And like I said, if you want to continue this conversation, like I said, I know I threw a lot of it at you, but I want you to know that there are tons of stuff that you can use. And a lot of my links, take you to places where you will find videos of how to use the tool. But if you do want to continue this conversation, you can connect with me on my website, thetechprofe.com, or on any social media as The Tech Profe. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am about to stop and open it up for any questions you might have.
Thank you. This has been incredible, all of these resources for us to explore. There are a few questions that came up on the Q&A that I can read to you.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Would you recommend a modified use of the tools presented for primary grades? So I think what is being asked is, what might you start with primary grades?
So with primary grades, I would definitely take a look at 2 different things, right? So what I just walked you through, I'm trying to look at my slide deck here. This component right here of how to chunk information down, I think it's something that I would highly recommend for teachers. Is how do you learn how to do that, right? The other thing I would highly recommend for you to use is Adobe Spark, spark.adobe.com. And if you click on here, it'll automatically take you there. But the reason why I love Adobe Spark is because it's really easy for, I've done this with kindergartners, right? Whether you have tablets or you have Chromebooks, you can use it, and it's a way to tell their learning, which you can create graphics, you can create video. That's really simple to use. And for the older students, if you're thinking about projects, it's a great way to create portfolios using their web page builder, which if you know how to upload an image, type in text, you now know how to build a website and a portfolio. So I highly recommend that. And then the other thing is, when I showed you guys how to fish, if we go back to edtechteacher.org, I would definitely go in there, click on, once again, what is it that you want your students to do? Do you want them to practice their speech? Do you want them to practice their writing, their presentation skills, whatever that might be? And choose, of course, your grade level. So that way it'll give you the tools that are recommended for your specific grade level.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you so much. There's a question here about do you use rubrics with your students for feedback?
It depends on what it is. I try to use rubrics for the larger projects. For a lot of the stuff that we do, I try to chunk and try to do small tasks. And once again, my whole notion, especially now more than ever, is to make sure that they're building schema on how to use these tools. Because the way I see it's like cooking, right? When we first all learned how to cook, it was easy for us to use, the three basic things, use olive oils and salt and pepper. um I have friends who are chefs who call that cheating, but that's the way I learned how to cook. And of course, the more you learn how to cook, the more you learn how to use different spices and different ingredients. And it's the same way with this, is stick to basic stuff. And when I say basic stuff is two of the top things I highly recommend people to do is to learn how to do is, number one, learn how to screencast. And if not, there are some resources in here that and two of them that I highly recommend: Screencastify and IORAD. IORAD is the other one that I highly recommend because it's easy for you to use, and what it does, it gives you a step-by-step instructions of how to do it for your students. So I highly recommend those two. So once again, learning how to screen, learning how to use video, and then of course creating hyperdocs, because I think that is going to pretty much take up most of your time of creating synchronous and unsynchronous learning.
Great, thank you. Excuse me. This question is interesting. How could we use these tools collaboratively if students are both in person and virtual at the same time? Like some of your students are home, some are coming because of staggered schedules and such. Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, and that's why I think with the Edge protocols, it's something that you can use when you're doing synchronously. But looking at multimedia text sets and looking at hyperdocs, this is something that they can do. Whether it's online or offline, and or synchronous or asynchronous is what I'm trying to say. And how I would use that is with the hyperdoc, right? You give them that time for exploration. I'm just going to go back over here and highlight this a little bit. Um, you give them that opportunity to explore. And when they're with you, you then have that opportunity to do the fast and curious, so you can understand how much they really understood, right? Besides the tasks that they're doing here, because a lot of these tasks are really is figuring out what they know. But it could be as simple as, and I know we didn't have time for this, using a tool like Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a tool where students can record a video. And my big thing is, tell me, instead of the regular questions, I always say, what made you wonder, and what's one big aha you got out of it today? And everything is produced in one Flipgrid, which means it's just one instance where you have all your students' video, and you understand whether or not how much they understand. Because if all you're doing is writing, you're only gonna get a percentage. If all you're doing is multimedia of some sorts, you're only gonna get a certain percentage depending on what the students like. That's why I always try to in my hyperdocs, I try to do a variety. Maybe one of the tasks is for them to write. Maybe another one is to do a sketch. Maybe another one is just to do a video and just them tell me, right? And once again, you're trying to give voice and choice for everything that they do. And you'll get more out of your students because, you know, um, from experience, not only as a teacher but also as a father and as a student myself, is most of the stuff we've always ever have done has to do with just writing, and writing is just one medium of communication. The year's 2020, ladies and gentlemen. We use a multiple of modalities to communicate our information. So that's why I would focus on, learning how to build a Hyperdoc, and then including the multimedia text, include the edu protocols, and then of course you can throw in, it's like a recipe, all the tools that you have seen. You can put them in different places.
I love your recipe analogies. Those are great. This question, and I think this will be the last one here, was specifically about Resumer and if it works with other languages, like Spanish articles, for examples. And if this doesn't, maybe, or do you have any apps or tools you would recommend for like ELD teachers?
Yeah, so this is where summary comes in. As you can tell, this is what, slide 84. So in here, there's quite a few nuggets. So one of my favorite ones is called summary, and I like it because with summary, you can pretty much do the same thing. You can translate it, but look at this wonderful thing. You can also upload a PDF document, because I know a lot of teachers and a lot of districts are using canned curriculum. That means a curriculum that already has been bought. And if you do have stuff that's online, a lot of it's PDF, so it's hard to work with. So the two things I highly recommend is to use something like Summary, because Summary, you can upload the file, you can chunk it that way. And then other tools I highly recommend is Small PDF. And Small PDF, if you are working with PDFs, these are all the wonderful things that you can do. And then Kami, also with working with PDF. Oh, did I type in the right one? So with Kami, it's also, let me go back to Kami Chromebook extension. So with Kami, it allows you to annotate on your PDFs. So this, for me, I install this as the IT director for this school district. I install this on all my students' Chromebooks and all the teachers, because some of them, since we're using Chromebooks, we can't use Adobe, we can't install. So these are my workarounds with learning how to use PDFs.
I think your, is it my connection or maybe your connection is getting a little bit
okay.
glitchy. Okay, we're just going to take a couple more questions here, and then we're going to wrap it up because you've been so gracious with your time and staying on longer with us, and we really appreciate it. So I think this kind of was stated throughout, but which tools would you recommend as a start just for a new teacher, new to distance learning?
For a new teacher to try? Is that what you're saying?
Teachers new to distance learning, like just a basic, easy start. And I think you kind of peppered that in through here, but I think someone's looking for, what do I start with?
Yeah, so I am going to direct you to slide 122. On slide 122, these are called engagement tools, and these are the tools that I tell people, if you're brand new to distance learning, this is where you want to start. And on here, when you click on it, it's going to take you to a multimedia text set that I created. So let's say, for example, if you want to learn a little bit about Desmos, about how do you create, different activities with math, all of these have a video that teaches you how to use the tool, right? And then once you learned about that, hit the little home button, it brings you back here, and then you go off and try to learn something else or explore. But I highly recommend, if you're brand new to this, my go-tos are Flipgrid, Adobe Spark, Jamboard, and of course, well, Google's part of the Jamboard's part of the Google Suite, but that's needless to say, Google has a lot of the stuff for you. But Jamboard is my go-to whiteboard. You saw app, you saw Google Autodraw. Flipgrid is the way to have the students show me what they know, either through video, through voice, and they also have a built-in whiteboard built in as well. So instead of having students doing multiple stuff, so I highly suggest doing that. And of course, Adobe Spark, because you're allowing your students to tell you or show you what they know in multiple ways of multimedia, all under one shop.
Great. Okay, and this will be our last question here. What would you recommend for students to learn from each other's responses? I know you kind of talked about how they can work together and then learn from each other. And I think that went back to about the middle of the presentation.
Yeah, so Flipgrid just announced a slew of new enhancements inside of it, and one of them that caught my attention is you can create a topic. So the topic might mean, I don't know, whatever you're teaching in there, and then the students can then respond to one another, whether it's through text or through video. Which in my head, it does a variety of few things. Number one, it allows the students to practice what they're going to respond, because most of the time, what do? Okay, are there any questions? Oh, right. And most of the time, the kids who raise their hands are the kids who already understand 85% of the information you're giving to. The kids you want them to raise their hands, they're still processing and they can't ask that question. They'll probably think of a question when they're heading home. With Flipgrid, since it can be an asynchronous activity, you allow them the thought time, and then they can produce either the response or the questions.
Betty hearing, Martine? Yeah. Or I'm cutting out, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, we're all good. Keep going.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, but that's like I said, Flipgrid is one of my go-tos. Before that was Padlet, but I'm training a Flipgrid because mostly everything that I can do on Padlet, I can now do on Flipgrid. So I'm
Great.
seeing, how do you connect with me afterwards? So let me exit here. Okay. Oh. There we go. So if you want to continue this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, you can get at me here. Once again, thetechprofit.com or anywhere on online. But if you go to my website, you'll find all the other places where you can find me as well. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere else. Yeah, all types of communications work. I'm usually online quite a bit.
Well, thank you so much for today, Martine. This has been illuminating and so many fun things to try for everybody. And I just wanted to tell everybody this is recorded. You can go back and watch this. We will not be having the debrief session today since Martine graciously extended time for us to take your questions. He offered how to connect with him. So if you would like to follow up, we thank you for doing that too, Martine. And I would just like to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. Have a great weekend.
Woo, woo. Yes, yes.
And yes, we'll see you next week if you want to come back for some more webinars. Thanks, everyone.